Hey everybody, welcome to another 5-minute wine lesson from Los Pinos Ranch Vineyards. I am Duncan, broadcasting to you today live from our Los Pinos tasting room in Fredericksburg, Texas. So we're going to follow up on our last 5-minute wine lesson today. Where last lesson we talked about what is a dry wine, what does that mean? And today we're going to go one step further into something we brought up in that lesson, which is tannins. What is a tannin? What are they? What do they taste like? What do they feel like? And it's pretty simple, although it's a chemical thing. It's a chemical compound that's found in red wines, but it's really important because it often is confused with dryness, which is what we talked about in our lesson on dry versus sweet wines. So if you didn't watch that before, you might want to check that out if you're confused about that before you finish this one. Anyway, moving on. So, tannins are something that exists in red wine, and it's kind of a bitter taste in your mouth that is imparted from the skins of the grape, the seeds of the grape, the stems of the grape, depending on the winemaking, and they exist in red wine because when you make white wine, as soon as you harvest the grapes, you press it all into juice immediately, and then that juice is turned into wine. Wine making process starts there with the juice. However, with red grapes, the way they get that red wine color and that bolder structure in those tannins is what you do once you've harvested red grapes is you actually smash the fruit and you let the fruit sit there with the skins and the seeds, and depending on the winemaking style, sometimes even the stems. All right, which brings me to a good point. If you ever really want to understand what tannins taste like, buy some grapes from the grocery store, pull a few grapes out the end, and just bite right into the stem of those grapes, and you will have this very intense green, bittery feeling in your mouth, and that is a very, very strong representation of what tannins are like. However, a little bit of that experience in red wine can make it very pleasant. So, I'm going to bring out here a bottle of our Cabernet Sauvignon. Cabernet Sauvignon is probably one of the most famous, well, it's probably the most famous red wine, but it's probably also one of the most famous wines in the world that has a strong amount of tannin. So, those of you who've drank some wine before, drank some red wine, and you notice that at the end you feel this drying sensation all over your tongue, maybe like kind of bitter, makes your mouth pull back a little bit and kind of feels like your tongue's getting wrung out like a sponge. Those are wines that are high in tannin. And like we talked about in our last lesson, those wines aren't any more dry than maybe a Chardonnay, but that drying feeling from the tannin is where people often get confused and refer to a wine as more dry or less dry because of the tannin level when they actually have the same amount of residual sugar. So that is what tannin is. It is a chemical compound that exists in wines that is a result of sitting on the skins and the seeds and the stems after the grapes have been crushed, which is another technical term you can add to your book called maceration. That's when you smash the fruit to start the red wine making process. All right, hope that was informative and cleared up tannin for you. And thank you so much for tuning in. Would love to see you guys out here at the tasting room in Fredericksburg or at the winery in Pittsburgh, and we could teach you even more about this kind of stuff. But if you don't have the ability to do that, we really appreciate you tuning in and also liking and sharing and following our YouTube page. That really, really helps us out with getting this wine knowledge out to the rest of the world. But yeah, thank you guys so much for tuning in, and we will see you next time here at Los Pinos Ranch Vineyards. Cheers.